Nowadays, the media is dogged in their denouncing of this whole Border Czar concept. Well, I think they're going to have a hard time going up against a House resolution. This was the 118th Congress First Session, House Resolution 253. Look at this, second paragraph. Whereas on March 24th, 2021, Vice President Kamala Harris was named Border Czar, in charge of leading efforts to stem migration across the United States-Mexico border. I don't know how you can argue with that. But I really think that these outlets are banking on the fact that you won't know what that House resolution says. Okay, first things first, I want to address the viewers. There are some of you who have demanded that I be more even-handed with my coverage and critique specifically the right media as well, because I've had plenty of critique of the left. Critiqued? Nice. Great start this morning. Critique of the left-wing media. Here's a couple comments I've received. Someone said, how did I end up on the Trumpsterville side of Instagram? That was in response to the Morning Joe clip I posted. Let's see, we had... it's not my fault you're in a bubble. How do you think the small channel got in my feed? Nice. You see, I do this challenging thing called weighting both sides. I've never heard of weighting both sides, but anyway, continue. One side lost a SCOTUS pick because I quote, when they go low, we go high. Meanwhile, one side needs full criminal immunity to continue their platform, but LOL, both sides same, right? I think what they're saying is to be more even-handed. I don't really know what they're saying. Meanwhile, on Fox News, much worse, but when you have to grasp at straws, LOL. Okay, all right, fair enough. Here's my answer to that. First of all, we have, in previous videos, I pointed out how both the New York Post and Fox News, two very well-known conservative outlets, use misleading headlines and extreme perspectives, okay? So we have addressed that, maybe not as much as the left wing, but here's one thing I think you're missing, is that there are plenty of people checking those outlets. You don't need me to do that. Since 2016, fact checkers are on par with journalists. It's a highly coveted job, it seems like, since 2016. And it seems like every time I type in part of a gosh, it's almost Friday, almost. It seems like every time I type in part of a Trump speech or a headline from a conservative media outlet like the Daily Wire or the New York Post, what comes up first is a fact checker checking what either Trump or that outlet said. This kind of scrutiny is not being applied even-handedly across the board. Why? Is it because the New York Times and CNN are just better outlets and they don't make mistakes? No, I don't think so. I think it's because they dominate the landscape. If you are convinced that they're just better and don't make mistakes, let me show you something. You may know that the Achilles heel that the Trump team has been targeting is Kamala's record at the border. Why? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's because she is the Border Czar. Or so we thought. Now outlets are denouncing the fact that Kamala had anything to do with the border at all during President Biden's term, which makes this question very silly.
Okay. Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
Nowadays, the media is dogged in their denouncing of this whole Border Czar concept. Check out these clips. I think I got a lot of this from the Media Resource Center, so props to them on this compilation.
Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. She was the border czar.
Calling her sort of the border czar, which wasn't necessarily the case.
So the border, if they weren't planning to address it in a major way, do not make her your border czar.
czar.
Well, I think they're going to have a hard time going up against a House resolution. This was the 118th Congress First Session, House Resolution 253. Look at this. Second paragraph. Whereas on March 24th, 2021, Vice President Kamala Harris was named Border Czar, in charge of leading efforts to stem migration across the United States-Mexico border. I don't know how you can argue with that, but I really think that these outlets are banking on the fact that you won't know what that House resolution says. One more, though. I have to show you this one.
She was put in charge of the border.
Nope.
She was put in charge of reaching out.
His face says everything. Jake Tapper is just like a kid. Nope. That's not true. Nope. And this guy's just like, oh my word. Here we go again. I love this. Let's watch this again.
She was put in charge of the border.
Nope.
She was put in charge of reaching.
Oh man, they're just doing the most. They are doing the most. Okay, so there's a little problem for our friend Mr. Tapper over there at CNN and his colleagues. This House resolution very clearly says that Kamala Harris was appointed Border Czar on March 24th, 2021. So that calls into question these news outlets' legitimacy. Where are they getting their info that Kamala is not the Border Czar? That she was never put in charge of the border? Could it possibly be that they, an unbiased, truthful, classic journalism outlet, want her to win? All right, here's the last thing I have for you today before I send you off on your weekend. The Olympic Games opening ceremony controversy. I know I'm late to the game. That was kind of intentional. Maybe I was lazy, actually. But I wanted to give some time to let this one simmer and not just have a quick hot take. And I actually changed what I thought about it a few times, which I realized is what happens when I don't have a hot take, is I kind of create more of a solid opinion and a solid view around it. Okay, so at first, I was reacting like many of you, just kind of outraged. Like, how can you openly mock Christianity? I mean, sure, it's an artist's depiction of Christianity, so it's not the Bible itself, but it still seems like a mockery. I was pretty furious. I was pretty furious. Then after a few days of seeing all of the responses on Instagram and Twitter, I started thinking, why do we care so much about this? Get over it. It's the Olympics. Focus on the Olympics. Focus on the athletes and the competition. But then I kind of talked to some more people, and I talked with some here at World Watch, and it got me thinking, what is the Olympics all about? Sure, it's not a Christian idea or institution in the first place. It's very humanistic, actually. It glorifies man. But all in all, it's wholesome. It's healthy competition. It's cheering for your country. It's a chance for countries to unite together to root on their athletes. If you're not patriotic, normally you'll probably get patriotic during the Olympics. And so unlike national leagues like the NFL or the NBA or the MLS, at the Olympics, we as Americans, more or less, are rooting for the same team. And that's pretty cool. You go to a restaurant, you go over to someone's house, you're all going to be rooting for the same team. That's awesome. I really enjoy that. And it's a fun memory of mine as a kid, watching this with my family. I remember Michael Phelps winning gold, or the Fab Five or the Final Five, Fiery Five. That women's gymnastics team in 2012 with Gabby Douglas and Allie Raisman, just absolutely killing it. I mean, it was a really sweet memory as a kid growing up and watching that with my family and with my friends. And it's a fun memory I hope to have with my kids. I mean, who knows? My kid might be in the Olympics with her incredible genes that she has. She could very well be an Olympic athlete. But it brought me to one question. As I thought about it, and I thought about them incorporating this drag scene into the opening ceremony, and I thought, why do they have to ruin it? Why do they have to ruin everything? I mean, they have to ruin any good, wholesome thing. This movement to normalize men dressing as women and vice versa, the movement to sexualize everything, you've ruined it. You've ruined it for families. You're ruining relatively pure things. If you want to broaden the scope even wider, you're running into schools and polluting young minds with these drag reading times for young kids, and they're growing and learning what's right and wrong, and you're ruining it. And it's not something we should easily shrug off. Not because it resembles some Da Vinci painting. That's, people can disagree healthily about whether or not that's mockery of Christianity or not. But my opinion is we should not be all right with it because it's forcing immoral values onto us and disguising it as love, okay? As inclusivity. We want everyone to be included. They don't want that. There's clearly a subset of a population that doesn't approve of that doesn't appreciate that doesn't want that shoved in their face, that you are not including, that you are not loving. And that display is anything but inclusive, and we shouldn't be okay with that. So I think that's my take. I mean, after the weekend, I may have a different take. I've kind of moved on from it. Honestly, it's super cool seeing the USA succeed in so many events, from swimming to fencing to rugby, gymnastics, women's gymnastics. Simone Biles absolutely killing it. Clark Kent in the men's gymnastics. I mean, that's stuff I want to focus on because it's awesome, but I think it's worth noting that we shouldn't be okay with this, that we shouldn't just kind of brush it off like, it's France, what are you going to do? It's not okay. And it needs to, the more you market something, push something that's abnormal on top of people over and over and over again, it becomes normal. It becomes okay. And what was normal before, not tolerating that and just having good, healthy marriages between men and women, will become the odd thing, which stay tuned because we'll have a video about odd things becoming normal and normal things becoming odd. Still working on my thoughts on that one. So we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, I'm Caleb Bailey. I'm a reporter with World Watch News, and we are a daily educational news program for students. Our team tackles current events and human interest stories all in one, while hopefully not leaving you stressed out. Along with these videos on YouTube, we have a full 10-minute show. And if you go to worldwatch.news/YouTube24 and use the code YouTube24, that's all caps YouTube24, you'll get the first month for free. So, if you like what we're doing here, try out our full news program. 10 minutes, 5 days a week. Just use the link in the code and we'll see you over there. Thanks for watching.